What if I told you there's a jet-powered combat aircraft that can take off from a space smaller than a pickleball court, while flying farther than most fighters and carrying the same amount of weapons as an FA-18 or F-35, and also be able to jam enemy radar like a two-seat Growler, and do all of this without a pilot on board or even remote control? Because that aircraft already exists, and it's called the Expat. Now at first glance, it looks like just another unmanned jet. But the deeper you dig, the more it starts breaking assumptions that we've built about air power for the past few decades. For example, where aircraft can launch from, how they fight, and even who is really flying the mission. This isn't a cheap drone. It's not a flying missile truck. And it's definitely not expendable in the way most people think. So in this video, we're going to answer a few big questions. How does a jet with an over 2,000 nautical mile radius pull off vertical launch and recovery? Why does the Expat use a combat-proven fighter engine instead of a business jet motor like most drones? How can one unmanned aircraft replace the mission of a two-crew electronic attack jet and keep fighting even after it's out of weapons? And most importantly, why this changes the way the F-35 Lightning fights and it doesn't replace it. So join me on this journey, my fellow connoisseur of military aviation, because along the way, we'll talk thrust vectoring that goes beyond the F-22, missile performance at extreme altitude, AI that's already survived GPS-denied combat environments, and yes, why a pickleball court is suddenly big enough to be an airbase. So let's take a look at how this new jet is changing the way we fight. And stick with me, because by the end of this video, you'll understand why Shield AI's Expat isn't just another aircraft program, it's a preview of how the Hivemind has awakened. Now, before we talk about how the Expat fights, we need to talk about how far it can reach. Because range is what turns an interesting aircraft, especially a drone, into a strategic one. When most people hear vertical launch and tail sitter, they assume short legs. Basically a cheap drone and more of a defensive system. Something that's tied very closely to the front line. But that assumption collapses fast, because the Expat isn't a short-range point defense drone. It has a 2,100 nautical mile combat radius, and that's with a mission payload on board. That means this aircraft doesn't just operate from unexpected places, it can actually project power across entire theaters. The Expat can launch from a dispersed pad, climb into thin air at altitude, and stay on station long enough to shape the fight before a manned fighter jet ever crosses the border. And if you're wondering as to how the Expat does this, well, we have to take a look under the hood, because when you realize how many pounds of thrust this baby can fit under the cowling, you just might be impressed. The Expat uses the GE F100 engine, which are the same engines that are found in F-16s and F-15s. Now, to say this is a proven engine could be a huge understatement. Being the heart and soul of both the Eagle and the Viper, not to mention the B-1. The F-100 has, by some estimates, 30 to 40 million flight hours, and that's on a combat-proven military-grade engine. But why is this important? Well, it turns out that just about every other CCA, also known as Collaborative Combat Aircraft or drone, today is using business jet engines. Now, while those are great for flying long ranges and staying airborne longer, there are times when you need that extra punch from an afterburner. And more on that in a minute. Another often overlooked aspect of military engines is that they generate a lot more electrical power. And let's just say that this isn't your dad's PC running Doom. The Expat is a flying supercomputer, and believe me, you're going to need that extra wattage to power its AI brain, sensors, and electronic jamming capabilities. In fact, the Expat has so much onboard jamming capability that it can fly the same mission that is flown today by the two-man EF-18 Growler. And from what we can tell, the Expat's EW suite is built in. So even when the drone goes Winchester and is completely out of weapons, it can remain airborne as a jammer and recon aircraft. Alright, getting back to the engines. In a sort of unintentional retro call out to the early jet fighters from the 1950s, the Expat has an air intake in the nose, just like the F-86 Sabre and the F-100 Super Sabre used to have. But unlike those early, fuel-inefficient 1950s jets, The Expat instead hauls ass and sips gas. And that's for two main reasons. For one, it doesn't have all the weight and space that are needed for a pilot and environmental systems. And number two, the Expat likes to cruise at 55,000 feet, where the air is very thin. But flying at high altitudes isn't just about sipping fuel. It also greatly enhances the range of air-to-air missiles. And if you've watched any of that Sidewinder That Growls guys videos, I'm a fan and a subscriber by the way, then you'll know that in air-to-air combat, if you can launch your missile high and fast, then you'll greatly increase your chance of a takedown. It's one of the very reasons that the F-14 Tomcat and F-15 Eagle were designed to fly high and fast. But the Expat does more than fly high and sip fuel. It takes that glorious F-100 engine to another level. You can think of it as turning things up to 11, because, get ready for it, this jet uses full multi-plane thrust vectoring, and it's the only current US jet that does so. Sure, the F-22 has two-dimensional thrust vectoring, which is awesome, but the Expat uses thrust vectoring in 3 dimensions. So, besides bragging rights and cool airshow performances, why is this important? Well, it allows for maneuvers that most other aircraft can't handle, and since there's no pilot on board, you don't have to worry about G-lock or blackout. So the Expat can pull harder turns for longer and perform different maneuvers that a human-piloted aircraft just simply couldn't. But beyond incredible maneuvers, the full thrust vectoring has a much more practical application. It allows the Expat to land vertically. And if this is reminding some of you spaceflight fans of how SpaceX recovers its rockets, well, that's because one of the principal designers of the SpaceX Falcon 9 now works on the Expat. Thanks, Elon. Now look, the Expat isn't the first VTOL aircraft. There have been many before it, like the Harrier and the F-35B. And speaking of the B variant of the Lightning, what has been found is that when the STOLVO model of the Lightning takes off or lands vertically, it actually burns or melts the runway underneath it. Because of this, the designers at Shield AI made their vertical launch system, or VLS, to include a blast shield to protect the surface under it. Okay, but besides again looking cool at an air show, what does vertical takeoff and recovery really change? Well, it turns out that the mere fact that the Expat can launch and land vertically is a huge game changer for military planners. Basically, any patch of land or open deck space on most large ships can become an airport. This is a major tactical advantage because one of the biggest vulnerabilities of Air Force bases or even carrier groups is that there's a single point where all conventional aircraft must launch and recover to. If you can damage or disable a runway or carrier flight deck, you've effectively taken out an entire air wing. This is why countries like China, Russia, and even the US have invested so heavily in long-range cruise missiles. Because if even one gets through, it could take out many fighters and bombers, leaving them helpless in their hangars. Now because of this, the Expat was essentially designed dimensionally to fit inside a standard shipping container. And what that means is that you can now have dozens or even hundreds of launch and recovery points that the enemy simply cannot account for. And more than that, not only can the launch pads be in various locations, they can be moved pretty quickly. Now this concept of a vertical takeoff and landing drone isn't new. In fact, in many ways, Expat builds on its smaller predecessor, a small ducted fan tailsitter called the VBAT. The US Navy, Marine Corps, and Coast Guard have flown VBAT for years as an expeditionary workhorse from ships and improvised landing zones. It proved that you could take off vertically, transition to forward flight, then land tail first without needing a runway the size of a football field. By comparison, the VBAT and Expat can take off from a pickleball court. And if you've ever played pickleball, well, then you know that pickleball is the most forgiving sport on earth. Small court, slow ball, short sprints. It's really designed so that almost anyone can play without breaking a sweat. The Expat, on the other hand, looks at that same pickleball court and says, cool, I'll take it from here. So if pickleball is tennis with the difficulty turned down, then the Expat is a fighter jet that turned physics down. One is optimized so you don't need endurance, speed, or power, allegedly. The other is optimized so you don't need a runway, base, or even permission. And just like how a pickleball rally ends because someone steps on the kitchen line, an Expat launch ends with the jet punching straight through the sky at full thrust. Getting back to the Expat's predecessor, the VBAT, the real secret was not the airframe, it was actually the autonomy. Shield AI, the manufacturer of both the VBAT and the Expat, installed their AI pilot, codenamed Hivemind, into the VBAT. It flew missions in GPS-denied environments, in comms-degraded skies, and in places where traditional drones would simply fall out of the sky from jamming. And it did this without streaming video back to a pilot or begging for constant inputs. It could navigate, avoid threats, and complete missions using its own best judgment. Much more than just a flight computer, Hivemind is an adaptive, mission-oriented AI. And it's been tested for more than a decade in thousands of hours of simulated and real-world combat conditions. This digital pilot learned to assess, maneuver, and engage under pressure. It was more than reactive. It could anticipate and optimize in real time. And just like the engine, the Expat took the Hivemind AI and cranked it to 11. One of the ways it does this is by making its sensor suite modular. Along with modular components that can be customized for each mission, the onboard combination of multi-mode radar, passive targeting sensors, and electro-optical systems constantly feeds data into the Hivemind. This allows the Expat to jam radar, deceive targeting systems, and generate false signatures. And when operating in a swarm, these EW effects multiply. So what this means for Expat is that inheriting this sophisticated AI and updated sensor suite allows the jet to fly independently or work with manned fighters like the F-35 on collaborative missions. Think of an F-35 flying with 4 or 5 Expats. The Expats could scout ahead at 55,000 feet, undetected while the Lightning pilot circles at a safe distance, gathering intel and building a picture. The Expats could then take out enemy air defenses, neutralize enemy fighters, and then the Lightning pilot could go on to perform the strike mission on the critical target or even do a damage assessment overfly. And when the Expats have expended their munitions, they could stay in the area jamming and protecting the F-35 as it passes through. The Lightning would return to its airfield or carrier, and the Expats could land anywhere there's a recovery platform set up. Alright, now that we've discussed the range, AI capabilities, and recovery advantages, the next question becomes unavoidable. What can the Expat actually bring with it? On paper, the Expat's payload puts it in the same class as an FA-18 Hornet or an F-35 Lightning, and that alone should reset our expectations. Because internally, the Expat can carry 4 AMRAAMs, allowing it to operate in contested airspace while preserving a low observable profile. That means it can quietly patrol, screen manned aircraft, or take the first shots in an air-to-air fight without lighting itself up on enemy radar. But the real flexibility for the Expat comes when stealth is no longer the priority. External hardpoints open the door to nearly the entire modern air-launched arsenal. The Expat can carry LASRAMs, precision-guided smart bombs like JDAMs, long-range cruise missiles, and even anti-ship weapons designed to threaten surface combatants far beyond the horizon. In other words, it can be tailored for the mission, stealthy and selective, or loud and very heavily armed. And this is where the Expat really starts to separate itself from most unmanned aircraft. It isn't single purpose. In one sortie, it can act as an air-to-air escort, in the next as a strike platform, and in another as an electronic warfare or recon asset. It can kick down the door by suppressing enemy air defenses, stay behind a jam and gather intelligence, or push forward to hunt threats before manned aircraft ever cross the line. So, from a strategic sense, what we're saying is that the Expat isn't carrying weapons, it's really carrying options. And in modern air combat, options are more decisive than raw firepower. Because we all know that no battle plan has ever survived contact with the enemy. Now, we need to take a minute here to discuss speed and stealth because it turns out that they're more related than most people think. Alright, don't expect the Expat to win any air races, but it does cruise at Mach 0.85 and it can dash supersonic. And here's the thing, you don't want to fly around at Mach Jesus for 2 major reasons. When you light those afterburners, you quadruple your fuel burn. And as a result, greatly reduce the time you can be airborne and in the fight. The other reason is that going supersonic greatly increases your radar cross-section or RCS, which reduces your stealth. You see, flying supersonic has been described as creating a bloom for your RCS, so you're much more likely to be detected when doing so. So why would you ever want to go supersonic? Well, it comes back to the whole missile performance thing. Dashing up to a supersonic speed allows the Expat to launch its missiles at high speed, then power down and go stealth again. It can also be used to escape enemy airspace or get back over an air border into safety. So at the end of the day, what you're really looking at here isn't just a new aircraft or even a new drone. This is really a shift in how air power is applied. Now, despite what many people think, the Expat is not going to replace the pilot in the cockpit. Instead, like any good tool, it's going to reshape the battle space around them. By bringing multiple Expats to the fight, it'll allow the F-35 to greatly extend its reach while the drones absorb the risk. And by doing so, we'll turn air combat into a coordinated system instead of a single jet making a single decision at a single moment. This is where air warfare is really becoming distributed, layered, and even resilient. You've got fewer fixed runways that you depend on, fewer predictable patterns. There are more options now for commanders and more survivability for pilots. And that's why programs like Shield AI's Expat really matter. Not because they look futuristic and cool, but because they quietly are changing the rules of the fight. Now, if you want more deep dives like this where we look past the headlines and really break down what these aircraft mean, make sure you're subscribed to this channel. And if you want to go even deeper, consider becoming a channel member or Patreon. Members help directly support this kind of long-form research and get access to exclusive content and behind-the-scenes stuff. Either way, thanks for flying along, and I'll see you in the next one. Now you know. PilotPhotog.com